Welcome to these lessons. In this lesson, we are going to see different type of prompts. We are going to see 5 type of prompt. But before started with the explication about the first type of prompt, I would like to say that you always have to test your automation and AI agent. That means you have to test your prompt and always change something, always improve the prompt. I would say for production, you have to test your automation at least 20-30 times, and you have to evaluate how many times the result was expected and what many times the result can get better and how many times the result was wrong. Because based on that, you will improve your prompt to increase the successful results. Let's start with the classification prompt. This is a prompt that we already saw in the earliest in this course. Because do you remember this automation that we created to classify, to create categorize and say if the hot is cold or not? That is a classification prompt. Because we are creating classes based on text, but could be based on images, could be based on audio, doesn't matter. Based on something, we create classes. And there is a couple features and practice to make sure that this prompt work as expected. And first of all is define the possible classes. You have to say if, for example, in categorize, you have to say is product, if marketing, if you have to define what is the possible classes. Also ask for consistency response. Instruct on respond only with, you have to say, for example, to avoid extra text that is not needed. Let's say you have to say response yes or not, cold or hot. Example in the prompt is another good feature or practice. I would say in your first prompt or first 5 prompt, avoid use example and add this example only when you see that the prompt is not working as expected. But basically the prompt example is an input-output prompt. You provide this text and the output is this another. Here we have an example. And consistent format. This is so important because you have to say what is the format. It's a JSON, it's only one word, it's a HTML, what is the format expected. You have to set up there. Something important to understand, this is applied on agents and automation. For example, if you have classes and the list of classes is so long, it will be on the database, but in the end of the day, it's the same. Let's see how is the prompt. As you can see here, the user prompt. The user prompt usually is dynamically changed for each iteration. And here the system prompt. This is the most important one for us. We define the role, we define the task, even we add some step by step for the task. It's up to you. And as I told you in the previous lesson, for me, the output format is required for automation. And I expect this kind of JSON as a response. If we see the response, each of the items respond with the same format in the JSON. Information extraction prompts. This is the second one. This prompt is helpful, or this kind of prompts, the goal is extract stuff from the text, images, or audio. I say text, images, or audio because in the end of the day, for example, audios are converted to text to analyze and convert an audio in the end of the flow. That is basically how the AI voice agent works. For example, if you want to extract the name, ticket number, date, and other stuff from the text, you have to write down this kind of prompt. And the best practice is define the keys to extract. Let's say you have to extract the name, the ticket, and the date. Second good practice, structure output format. Pretty the same than the previous one. We have to say what will be the expected format. It's common in this kind of prompt, but something like HTML or JSON. JSON is the king here. Include some examples. The same that I told you before is good at example when your prompt is not performing well. And handle missing data. What's happened when it doesn't find or there is not any name on the text? What will be the input? Will be null? Will be empty? Will be omitted? You have to define that. Let's take a look quickly. I hardcode a test. This is the text to extract, and as always, this is totally dynamically, and the system prompt is this. We have the role, you are a test word structure, and the task. You below here, I set up a rule. If the data is not mentioned, use null and expected output. We can see here is pretty similar to before, but only change that we add rules because it's needed in this moment. But we keep the role, task, and output expected. Once we execute that, we can see the system, the issue type, and date. We have the date, the report that, okay, we have the application as well, and we have this error. Even we can catch the status error as well if we want. This is like a reporter test and extract the data to create a ticket. Controller generation prompt. This prompt is usually used when you have to create text. A use cases could be email. You have to send an email because the customer is complaining about something about your product, and your AI agent or automation has to respond to them. And here is so important, the prompt has to be so accurate about how will be the style, how will be the tone, will be formal, informal, friendly, accurate. You have to say the length of the format and limitations. Maybe we won't want some large text, something more accurate and straightforward. Or maybe we want a long explication about the issue or technical explication. We have to set up all this stuff here and allow and provide basically forbidden content. This is good to add in rules as a limitations. Let's say don't share some data about the company, could be, or the personal data will not share this stuff. And templates and example. The example is the same here. You avoid in the first prompt, as I always say, avoid add example. Only add example when the prompt is not performing well. Let's see. It's the same. I have a hard code test. It's like a hello. Can you tell me how to reset my password? Typical question in applications, and execute to see what is there. Okay, here we have the output test, sorry, and let's take a look the system prompt. As always, we define the role. You are a virtual customer support assistant and the software company. We define the rule, the task is respond a customer following these instructions. This is not working this way in English. That is way. And some rules. For example, in this case, always speak in English because a couple minutes ago this responds to me in Spanish. And well, I add this rule that I have been improving this prompt based on the inputs provided. And I add an example, how will be the response. Here there is two options that I added. Temperature, because the lower it result, basically when it's close to zero, become a deterministic and repetitive. Because in this case, the reactivity is not needed. The creativity is needed for all other kind of actions, such as agents that have to achieve goals or think about it, what will be the best solution. But in this case, we want to know what will be the answer, or what will be, how close will be the answer to the expected answer. The same with top 0. With that, we can get, with those setups, we can get some those setups, we can get more similar response always. And that is something that we want in this kind of automation and prompts. Reasoning prompts or analytical or logic tasks. This prompt is useful when you have to create summarize, when you have to create conclusion, when you have to analyze the data provided and create something with that. Because it's different to the controller, because in the controller is more focused on the formats and style. Here the focus on is thinking in analytics. Let's say an example. You have a couple comments belong to the post. A post could be an Instagram post, TikTok post, and Reddit post, and you want to create a trend based on these comments. For that, you have to analyze all these comments, and it's analyzed because in the end of the automation or agent, the result will be what is the trend, what is the reason of the trend, and other stuff needed. The best practice to make sure that everything works as expected with this kind of prompt is say to the user, think on what is the process before responding. This promotes the internal logic structure before jumping to the conclusion. Even when some advanced models like GPT-4 or Claude already do this stuff, it's always powerful at this instruction in the prompt for this kind of use case. Request explanation is the number 2, or justification. Request the response include the reason behind the conclusion. Have you seen this text on ChatGPT or Claude when you use a thinking or reasoning models that basically show how the agents or how the chat is thinking? That is about. Delimit the analysis of the scope. Let's say you have a sources, you have to say, well, based on these sources, conclude this stuff. Based on this database, conclude, and this and other stuff. Next one, and the most important, and maybe it's the most important because here you will create your format. It's the same and the rest, but here I think have even more important because you have to say, well, it's a conclusion, it's a JSON, it's only one text. Always is a conclusion because you are analyst, you are summarizing something, you are concluding something, you are analyzing something, or it's a JSON where you summarize the final response. Let's say how is the prompt. As usually, the user prompt is dynamically. We have the job description and summary candidate. Sorry, I have to explain what is that. This is a pipeline, an example of the pipeline of the HRS, where the AI agent has to evaluate if the candidate is a good match with the job description based on the candidate summarized and job description text. I know it's a poor example here because candidate summary always is so long text, but just to show how is the prompt here. Well, as I told you, user prompt always is dynamically, and here we have the system prompt. We have, as always, the role, task. Here we say a couple of steps before final provide the conclusion, a single conclusion. Briefly list the key requirement of the loan, okay. And even you can add here as well this 2, 3, 4, whatever you want before the final conclusion. But be careful. All the description or all the steps have a briefly description. I set up a rule because I want to respond with the reasoning. Even when the reasoning is already this, I would like to know a reasoning description and the conclusion at the same time. Here we have the expected output. And this is the expected the output. We have the list, nice. We have the reason, the candidate possesses the essential requirement of the Python, Django, AWS, and is familiar with Docker. And we have the conclusion, nice. Now let's see the next one. And what is the and we are going to see what is the difference between this and the reasoning, because they are cousin. They are so similar. Chain of the thought is the evolution of reasoning prompts, because here we have a chain of thought. It's the same. We are going to apply these two tasks where we need to analyze, summarize, or conclude something. But here is when the analyze or summarization become a new level, and you have to create different step by step that the model have to achieve before get the final conclusion. A couple good practices instructs the model to think step by step, similar that we did in the previous one, but here we can add even more. Clarify separate rejection as the final answer. You have to say what is a chain of the thought and what will be the final answer. Few shot COT. This is about for complex problems. We can include some examples, but here is the same with examples. Add example after testing your solution, because you get better after each operation, each iteration, and in the end of the day you will get the expected result, but depend on if it's needed or not. Apply this step only when you are not happy with the result of the N8N, of the module, sorry. And here another step is you see that your task is so big or is so complex, you can split out. Here we have example, extract the summary of relevant data, analyze the summarized data, and generate the final response. You can do this as well. In multi-nodes, or even you can create parallel nodes, more OpenAI nodes, and all of them could be worked in the same task, but with different focus. It's up to you as well if you want to go parallel different tasks or in the same task. In the end, you can merge the response in only one. Let's take a look how this looks like. This is the input data. It's a list of tasks, and one task has a duration and depends on another one. And we have to calculate how is the time to complete a task. Here is much better. We have here a tip here is when you have a list of JSON, array of JSON, use this to JSON string. If not, you will get something like object, and it's not, the model cannot read that. I use even O3 because in my opinion, I think this is much better than GPT-4o, but it's as well a little bit more expensive. It's not wrong. You can check. The same role. You are a project planning agent integrated in automation workflow. Your job is analyze task dependency, calculate schedule timelines, and determine the critical path of the project using logic and step-by-step reasoning. Here we have the task. Task number 1, task number 2. The number 2 have 3 steps. Task number 3, determine the total project duration and identify the critical path. This is the number 4. Return all results in structured JSON. Don't worry about it because you will get the entire resources on GitHub. Expected output, and here something beautiful. A list of number of the thought describe your reasoning. I would like to know what was the thought in each of the steps. That's why the name is chain of thought. And as a conclusion, we want to know this JSON. When we see, we have thoughts. Thought number 1, thought number 2, number 3. Number 3 was long, even, as you can see. It's so good when you want to debug the behavior of the automation or AI agent. And here we have the conclusion. This is more for complex tasks, but if you will become an AI agent developer, you have to know this because you will use in some point of your career. the different type of prompts that we have. And now let's summarize something. What are the most common errors that we usually have? One is the response are different. The response are not expected. And that usually happen when our system is not enough deterministic. That means the temperature is not zero or is far from zero. Number two, the input is or AI agent or automation is weak with inputs, with weird inputs. Let's say that you have an AI assistant that answers emails, send emails based on a message. And let's say a user respond with an emoji or respond with a weird signals or just with a wrong expected input. You have to write down how handle this stuff in the prompt. Or even better, you can add a layer, could be a set node plus a conditional node, and if the input is not good enough, just reject this flow. Our system number, the next one is the system lost the context. That usually do when our prompt is so large, or maybe the input is so large as well, or when we have an AI agent and the agent has a memory and we store a lot of stuff in the memory, the token increase a lot and we got issues for that. We can fix that, make sure store only the needed on the memory, and we have to summarize this data that we store there. Then a common other issue is not think about edge cases, weird cases that is not expected. If you don't thought about it, the AI agent or automation, because agent should be handled that, the automation doesn't have any way to handle. That's why you have to thought and add validations and even write down how handle these kind of edge cases. Another usually error is not think about how will be the best model to the use cases. We can use, for example, GPT 4.0 for for the most of the tasks, but maybe for something related with coding or another action to need think about deeper, maybe something like a 3.0 will be much better. Or maybe Claude, the last version of Claude, inversion think. We have to make sure that we are using the correct model based on the use case that we have. Just reading a little bit in the documentation of the OpenAI or Claude or DeepSeek about what is the best skills of the model will be enough. Well, advanced for the next lesson, we are going to see how apply this kind of prompts on AI agents. It's pretty similar, but something will change.